Or is it Allah and us? What is the ratio between predestination and free will? Imam looked at that person, he said to him, lift your right leg. Person lifts his right leg. Imam looks at him and says, now lift your left leg. The person says, I can't lift my left leg. Because imagine, you've lifted your right leg, now he says, lift your left leg at the same time. He says, I can't do it. He says, that's the ratio. There are some things you have free will on, there are others predestined by God. That's the way. And the same Abu Hanifa, may Allah bless his soul, he went to Imam Musa al-Kadhim, and when he went to Imam Musa al-Kadhim, he came to Imam Musa al-Kadhim. Imam Musa al-Kadhim was 5 years old, brothers and sisters. Imam Musa al-Kadhim, 5 years old. Abu Hanifa had come to see Imam al-Sadiq. Did he find him? No, Imam al-Sadiq was busy. Abu Hanifa saw a 5-year-old. Imagine, our 7th Imam at the age of 5 is teaching Ahlul Sunnah's number 1 Imam in his oldest age. 7th Imam, aged 5, is teaching number 1. Yes? So Abu Hanifa, he comes, he says, Musa, can I ask you a question? I am uncertain about one thing, this idea. Is it us who commit a sin? Is it us and God, or is it God alone who makes us do it? And how did he reply? He said, if it is God alone who made us do it, it is not just that he punishes us for something which he done. Number 2, if it is us and God, once again, it's not fair that we are punished for a crime which God was part of. He said, number 3, therefore, when we commit a sin, we are the ones who have been given the free will to decide between good and bad. As the Quran says, إِنَّا هَدَيْنَاهُ السَّبِيلِ إِمَّا شَاكِرًا وَإِمَّا كَفُورًا. We have guided you on the right path. You are either grateful or you are ungrateful. Taking this on board, the 2 concepts come in the theology of Islam, that only an infallible leader can look after the justice of God on earth. Look how it comes together. Christianity said what? Leaders aren't infallible, and that you don't have free will. We're all born sinners. In Islam, what do we say? We say that a leader of God has to be infallible, because if he is not infallible, he cannot explain the concept of justice in the religion of Islam. That's why every prophet of God came to establish justice. Nabi Shu'aib, he went to the people of Midian. The people were known for 2 things. Number 1, they were highway thieves. In the roads, they'd wait for the caravans, they'd come and steal. And number 2, they were people who were con artists. They'll tell you, we're giving you this much of the goods, but in reality they've only given you half of that. Nabi Shu'aib, he came as a prophet to establish what? He wanted to establish social justice and economic justice. Here is one prophet. Nabi Yusuf as well. He comes in Egypt, established justice on a social and an economic level. The Prophet Muhammad, again, an infallible prophet of God. His role is to come and show mankind what? That justice has to be established. That you are not predestined in all your actions. That you as a human being have to rise against injustice when you see it. Yazid told Sayyidah Zainab, he said to her, Zainab, Allah made me kill Hussein. She replied, no, you had it in your free will. It was in your free will. The idea here is that a prophet has to establish justice. That's why only an infallible leader after Muhammad can look after God's justice on earth. You can't have someone who believes only predestination. Why? Bani Umayyah used the idea of predestination to con people. To tell them that, look, Allah has made us do this. I've got no choice. Hussein was killed by Allah, not by me. And in the same way, this brings about a psychological disorder. Because if in the Muslim world you think Allah has written, I'm going to be a sinner, I'm going to be a bad person, I'm going to do this haram, you will automatically put it in your head what? You will automatically put it in your head that there is no point living in the correct way. Ali ibn Abi Talib, what was he called? The voice of human justice by the Lebanese Christian George Jordak. Because Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he came in, he wanted to establish that you have free will. You have the ability to change the course of Islamic history. It is within you. And that's why we find, for example, Talha and Zubair, the only reason they fought Ali ibn Abi Talib, the only reason they fought him was for what? They fought him for the simple reason that he brought this whole idea of justice in society. That he established justice in society. And that's why you find what? Talha and Zubair once come to see Amir al-Mu'mineen. When they come to see him, Amir al-Mu'mineen, what does he do? He blows out the candle, he puts another candle there. Talha looks at him, he says, Amir al-Mu'mineen, why did you just blow out these candles? For what reason? And he replies, the reason I blew out these candles, you have come to see me over a private affair. That candle, the first one, was from the money of the Muslims. Because you have come to see me over a private affair, Ali ibn Abi Talib must put a candle which he bought from his own money. This is justice. This is how you establish it. That he returned from the battle of Khaybar. He saw some Jewish prisoners there. Do you know what he did? He began to cry. They came to him and said, Amir al-Mu'mineen, why do you cry? What's wrong? He says, I cannot bear to see a human being with a rope around his hand. Remove the rope. Only then will I stand and be victorious on this day. I may have lifted a gate that others could not lift, but I need to see that this rope is removed, because a human being deserves justice in all areas of his life. And we look at Amir al-Mu'mineen and we wonder, and we ask about Amir al-Mu'mineen, saying, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you would not accept Ibn Muljam, you wouldn't accept his body mutilated, yet what would you see if you saw Ali Akbar's body on the plains of Karbala? And you wouldn't accept that a person is not given water. What would you do if you saw the thirsty ones who now travel in the night without any water given to them? And that's why you find in this idea that a Christian will come towards Ahlul Bayt. You know why? Because a Christian believes that God will send a just leader at the end. In their idea, Jesus will come at the end. That's why we must always tell them that in the same way you believe Jesus will come, we believe that Al-Mahdi min al-Muhammad will come with him as well. The more you explain to them, Allahumma salli ala, the more you explain to them the idea that only a just, infallible leader can bring the idea of justice at the end of time, the more Christians will come. And that's why I remember a beautiful story that was narrated about a Christian monk who once came to Rasulullah. And he came to Rasulullah and he said to Rasulullah, he said, Ya Rasul, he said, oh Muhammad. He didn't believe Rasulullah was a prophet, but what he said was, Muhammad, you are a pious man. I want you to do one thing for me. What is it? I want you to pray to your Lord that I have children, because I don't have any children. And me and my wife, we live where? We live in Halab. You know Syria? Halab, where Imam says, me and my wife, we live in Syria. We don't have any children. I have come to you because they say you are a pious man. Please pray for me that we have children. Rasulullah has narrated to have prayed for him. He says to him, he looks at him, he says, I will pray for you, but here Abu Abdullah was only 7. So he looked at Abu Abdullah, he said, Abu Abdullah, come here. The monk was looking at him, and what happened was, he looked at him and he said, who is this young one? He said, this is the master of the youths of paradise. He said, ask through him. Because Allah loves Abu Abdullah. He has an unbelievable affection for Abu Abdullah that no one will ever see love like the one given for Abu Abdullah. So Abu Abdullah looks at him. He says to him, how many sons do you want? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He said, that's enough. 7 sons will be enough. What happens is, it's narrated, Jibreel, he comes down. He says to Rasulullah, he said, my Lord has said to me, if Abu Abdullah continued counting from then until the day of judgment, Allah would have given that man that many sons, out of how much he loves him. Do you know what this monk said to Abu Abdullah? He said, Ya Abu Abdullah, if one day you happen to be passing by, if one day you pass by, please come and say hello to the family if we have children. And what happens is, he sees him one day in Medina when Imam Hassan is the Imam. They've both grown up. He sees him, he says, Ya Abu Abdullah, I have 7 sons now. 7 sons. He says, one day I want you to come past and I want you just to come and say hello to these 7 sons. So he says, Abu Abdullah looks at him, he says, I never reject those people who I promise I will see them. One way or another, I will definitely see you. It's narrated that Ibn Ziyad, his army comes and they approach Syria. When they approach Syria, they come near Halab, there is a monastery there. When he comes, he knocks at the door of the monk comes out, he says, how may we help you? And he replies to him that we have just come from fighting a war. And in this war we've fought some of these Khawarij. And their leaders are all here. Their heads are all on spears. He says, here they are. We want to stay here for the night. The monk looks at him. He says, yes, you can stay here for the night. He says, may I ask you one question? Whose head is that one there? And he says to him, why? He says, there is a light that shines from that head. Whose head is it? He says, that's the head of their leader. He says, do you mind if I just take that head just for one night? Let me just take it home. I just want to have a look at him. Because there is something special in that face. He says, take him for one night. Tomorrow you give him back to us. He takes him in and he begins to wash that face which is full of blood. He begins to wash the face. As he's washing the face, he looks at his wife. He says, do you recognize the face or no? She says to him, I beg you to tell me whose face it is. He says, I do not recognize it, but something about it reminds me of someone. Imagine, Abu Abdullah, when horses have trampled on your head, what happens to your face? And when people have come and there's arrows all over, what happens? He says, at this moment, I ask you in the name of Mary and the Son of Mary, please